Okay, I'm going to start class by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. Today is what we call our group learning program, where each Sunday and Wednesday I come together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. We use this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, as a foundational text for this program, where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, helping students to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. We start with meditation, but then afterwards I'll provide a talk on one of the chapters in the book. We're now in chapter 23, which is titled Symbolism of the Teachings, Reminders Through Imagery. This is where you learn about all the different artwork, architecture, symbolism of the teachings of the Buddha, because during his lifetime, he taught everything orally. There wasn't the ability to write things down during his lifetime, so he used symbols as a way to help people remember his teachings. So a lot of those symbols are still in use today, and as you go around temples, you'll see a lot of these things. So if you understand these symbols, when you visit a temple, it has more meaning to you. It's almost like the temple walls speak to you as you walk around the temple, because many of these temples were built 500 to 1,000 years ago, and the people that constructed them, they had something to communicate, and they embedded that into the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism. So if you understand the language that they're speaking, you can actually go around and glean information from the temple walls. So I'm going to be sharing those kinds of things with you today after our meditation, and it'll help make your visits to temples even more meaningful. So again, welcome to you guys here. Welcome to everyone online as well. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you'd like to see these chants and chant along, the chanting sheets are over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself to get one. Those of you guys online, you'll find these on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books and then just scroll down towards the bottom and you'll see the chanting sheets there. These chants that we're just using them in order to ease the mind into meditation, in order to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to help them commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally as a way to help them remember the teachings, so that then they could actually practice the teachings. Today, we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings. We have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, all these kinds of things to be able to study the teachings. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't have those things. So that's why they needed chanting. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. None of those kinds of things actually exist in the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing those kinds of things associated with his teachings, it's actually not the teachings of the Buddha. He never taught any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. His teachings aren't about a bunch of beliefs that you believe things and then hope something good happens when you die. It's about learning, growing, and developing in this life, cultivating the mind and cultivating wisdom. So you won't find any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer in his teachings. And then if you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death. Because a Buddha wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me. This would be ego or arrogance if somebody did that. So I suspect these were created by his students either during his life or after his death. Because if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person as well. So that's why I think these chants actually came from his students, not from him directly. So you're welcome to chant them, and you'll notice that you'll get more benefit as you're easing into the meditation. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance where I'm essentially going to be teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating here at the temple, and anybody joining online, we'll just all be meditating together at the same time. Then during that period of time of quietness, you're going to notice that there's occasional sounds. You're not going to be able to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be frustrated, irritated, annoyed, or some other discontent feeling. This is why you can actually eliminate these discontent feelings, because it's actually your own mind that's causing it. It's not the outside world. But oftentimes that's what people believe, is that it's their mom and dad that are frustrating them, or it's their brothers and sisters that are annoying them, or it's their boss that is irritating them. But it's actually your own mind that's causing this. And it's the mind craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way permanently. When you live in an impermanent world, you're not going to be able to experience permanent quietness during meditation. So you might hear an occasional car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might sneeze or cough or something like this, but all of this is impermanent. Those sounds are going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. So if you're in meditation, understanding impermanence, when you hear these occasional sounds, you can just understand the world's functioning the way it's intended to function, and there's constant impermanence around you. And you can reside with peace and joy during the meditation. After we do that period of time of quietness, I'm going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times because they're like tools that you need during your journey to enlightenment, and you would employ these different tools at different times. Oftentimes, students are learning in the seated position, so I'll share some guidance with you on this to kind of help you to find something that's more comfortable for you. You can really sit however you like. There's not just one way to actually sit, because that would be permanent, and we live in an impermanent world. Everybody's body is a little bit different. You'll find different things to be comfortable. So you can use the things that I'm recommending and sharing with you as suggestions, or you can come up with your own way of sitting. It really doesn't matter, as long as the body's comfortable. You're not interested in the body being painful, but also you're not interested in being luxurious either. You'd like it to be in the middle where it's comfortable. So you could be sitting on the floor or in a chair, the bench, a sofa, a wheelchair. These are all options. You could sit however you like. And if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat a bit. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you like to just do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it could impede the circulation in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use that. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people like their palms up, or maybe even just rest your hands comfortably in your lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you. And the same thing goes for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so that's an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of the upper body, it's helpful if this is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because it'll keep the mind attentive and alert so you can actively train it, but it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do this chanting to ease into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join, and then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Bhutang Mahakewanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakewata Tammo Namang Namasami สุปฏิปันโนมหะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะพุทธังมหาคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาตัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมอะระสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This individual that we refer to as the Buddha, he 2,500 years ago figured out how to get to enlightenment, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these feelings and others are eliminated because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing them. There are certain pollutions in the mind that the Buddha discovered. We refer to these as the 10 fetters, and these pollutions can be uprooted and eliminated out of the mind through training of the mind. And as he taught everything orally. That the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. It existed in China during that time frame. He would live from 563 BCE to 483 BCE. This technology to write things down existed in China, but it didn't exist in this region of the world that he was in. He was in where we refer to as Nepal or Northeast India. That line didn't exist back then, but that's the region of the world that he was in. And just like today, where technology kind of gradually moves through society, it's the same thing that happened 2,500 years ago. Now, you might not see writing something down as technology, but 2,500 years ago, that was technology. So the language that the Buddha spoke was actually an oral language, that the language that he spoke didn't even have a script because they didn't have a need for a script. It wasn't until shortly after he died that they actually started writing the teachings down. And by the time he died, there were countless people that had gotten to enlightenment, that they understood their mind was enlightened because they no longer experienced any discontent feelings. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll never forget the teachings that it took for you to get to enlightenment. Because essentially what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're upgrading your operating system, like a computer. You might be on an old archaic operating system, and now you apply software and you upgrade that software. And the same thing is true about the human mind, that you can actually upgrade the wisdom that you have in your mind, or the lack of wisdom. You can upgrade that through training of the mind. And then once you gain that wisdom of what it took for you to get to that peace and joy, that focus, the concentration, the clarity of mind that the mind will have, where you get to a point where all your relationships, both personally and professionally, are completely harmonious, that you're not even having a bad mood any longer. You'll get to the point where you can experience this mental state, and you won't forget those teachings that it took for you to get to that point. So after the Buddha died, there were countless people that had gotten to this mental state, but 500 of them got together and started documenting his teachings and started writing them down, because by that point, the technology had made its way to that region of the world. But all during the lifetime of the Buddha, he taught everything orally. And that's why he used chanting to help people to commit the teachings to memory. But if you were in a discourse with the Buddha where you were learning from him, and then he could expose you to a certain symbol that would represent his teachings, then whenever you saw this symbol, it would help you to remember his teachings. So there's certain symbols that I'm going to introduce you to today as part of our class. This chapter 23 is titled Symbolism of the Teachings, Reminders Through Imagery. This is the way that the Buddha would help his students remember his teachings. That these symbols that you're going to see, if you saw them, say, on the side of a barn as you're walking down the street, it could remind you of the teachings, and it would bring that to the forefront of your mind, and then it would ultimately help you to practice the teachings. Because in order to be able to get to enlightenment, there is a certain amount of intellectual understanding that you need in order to learn, investigate, and examine teachings, but you need to reflect on those teachings too to independently verify if they're true or false. And then you need to practice his teachings. You need to integrate them into your day-to-day life, making decisions through that knowledge and that intellectual understanding that you have. And that's where you ultimately cultivate wisdom. That's where the real transformation is occurring in your day-to-day life as you're making decisions through this new wisdom. So by using symbols and bringing to the forefront of your mind the teachings that he taught, this actually helped you to then be able to practice the teachings, implementing them into your day-to-day life. And as I mentioned, many of these symbols are actually still in use today. And if you understand what these symbols are and what they mean, they can actually help you as well to be able to bring the teachings to the forefront of your mind, so that then you can actually practice the teachings and see this transformation in your life. Oftentimes people think that getting to enlightenment is to sit under a tree, meditate, and instantly get to enlightenment. They think this is the way the Buddha actually did it. But it wasn't that way. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that slowly led to his enlightenment. That he says this in his own words multiple times in his teachings. And you know this to be true for yourself because everything you've ever done has been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Whether it's learning how to read, write, or speak a certain language, it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Or maybe some job or occupation. Maybe you have a certain skill that is unique just to you. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that allowed you to cultivate those skills. Well, the path to enlightenment is the same way. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It's this inner growth, this inner development. It's like a self-help program that the Buddha's guiding you to this better way of life. It's not rules and commandments. It's not a bunch of beliefs. It's not rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. It's about cultivating wisdom about the world around you. And the more that you understand that wisdom, you'll be able to navigate the world more peacefully, making decisions through that wisdom. So I'm going to introduce you to multiple symbols today using pictures. This is actually a really fun class. I think all of our classes are fun, but this class is particularly fun. I see a few children in the audience, so this is actually good. Or maybe some people that think that they're children and function like they're children and maybe enjoy being like a child and very childlike. So it's kind of fun to be able to look at pictures and sit back and talk and have discussion. So I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures and then we're going to talk about it. I'm going to help you understand what these images are, because you're going to see them in artwork. You're going to see them in the architecture of temples as you walk around. You'll see these symbols in different places. And now when you visit a temple, it's almost like the temple walls speak to you because you understand the language of the people who actually constructed these temples. Most of these temples in Thailand were constructed 500 to 1,000 years ago. And there's about 45,000 temples in Thailand, where about only 35,000 of them are actually in operation. So as you go around and you visit temples, this is kind of a really nice thing to know, is the symbolism of the temples. If you're Thai and you actually grew up, say, in a place like Chiang Mai, and then you go on holiday to a place like Phuket, you might actually work into your family plan visiting Phuket to kind of visit a few temples and kind of see what's going on in those temples. It's kind of a common thing that you'll see among Thai people. So as we go today, you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions. I'm going to be stopping at the end of each symbol that I talk about and let you guys ask any questions that you would like, because these symbols are connected to the teachings of the Buddha, and you might have questions about the teachings of the Buddha or the symbol itself or any number of things. Maybe you've seen these symbols different places. If you'd like to ask questions, we have microphones here for you in the white bowl in the middle of the room. All you need to do is get a microphone, take it back to your seat, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and then you can hold this up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with those folks. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, this will help us to not get feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, if you're interested in asking questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. And if you're listening to this on our podcast, which is purely audio, you might decide to find these images on our website through downloading our book or seeing one of our presentations and our PDFs where you can see these images. These images are in Volume 1, Chapter 23, and you'll be able to see them there. So this first image, I refer to it as the Na, or some people call it the unilome. This is actually a symbol of enlightenment. This one in the middle is very common. So we'll talk about this one first. This is actually symbolizing your journey to enlightenment and your path to enlightenment. And oftentimes this is used as a symbol of enlightenment as well. You might actually see this symbol on statues or pictures of the Buddha. They will put this at the third eye in the middle of his forehead between his eyebrows. He didn't literally have this symbol there during his lifetime, but people put this sometimes there at his third eye as a symbol of his enlightenment and having attained enlightenment. But what it does is it actually helps you to understand your journey to enlightenment and what it's going to be like. Because sometimes when we talk about this peaceful and joyful mental state and how you're not experiencing anger and sadness any longer, and the mind's calm and peaceful, and you're experiencing harmonious relationships, sometimes people think it's like walking on clouds, that you're going from this disgruntled place where you are with your mind, and you're having this kind of movement like this where it's like a straight line to get to enlightenment. It's like walking on clouds, and there's like rainbows and butterflies along the way. Well, yeah, when you get to enlightenment, your mind's completely peaceful and joyful. But in your journey to enlightenment, you're going to meet with quite a few struggles and challenges. And that's what this symbol is actually symbolizing. So this symbol starts here in the middle, where this is, us having continuous rebirths over and over and over again. That's why it's kind of a circle here. This is something that you can independently verify about the teachings of the Buddha. He teaches the cycle of rebirth and how we're constantly being reborn over and over and over and over again. So an individual that is being reborn, they're being reborn over and over and over and over again. That's what this is symbolizing here. And you notice the part of the path here is really wide and it's really dark, right? Because it's very challenging to be in that unenlightened state with those pollutions in the mind. It can be very dark sometimes to sit there and deal with your own thoughts. But as you journey on this path and you start getting on the path, even though it's dark and it's wide, eventually there's starting to be forward movement and movement upwards. But as you're making movement upwards, while the path is narrowing a bit, it's not quite as dark anymore, and you're making forward progress, there are going to be missteps. There's going to be backward steps where you're working towards a certain goal and then you have backward steps, right? But then there's forward progress. There's some more forward progress, but then there's going to be some missteps again. And then there's forward progress, and then there's missteps. And you're doing all this all the way up. There's going to be right here, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're showing 6 missteps, but you're going to have many more than 6 missteps on the path to enlightenment, right? You're going to have many of those along the way. But notice as you're moving up, it's narrowing in. This is because your wisdom's becoming more and more, and you're narrowing in on what it takes to get to enlightenment. So even though there's missteps, there's forward progress, and you're moving upward, and you're coming in more closely to what it is to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. But eventually you narrow in on this so well that now the mind moves into this enlightened mental state. And that's what this is symbolizing here. The mind's moving to enlightenment. So this is called the na or the unalome. You'll hear other people refer to this in different ways. I've seen people that get tattoos of this. I've seen people put it in artwork. I'm not suggesting you necessarily go out and get a tattoo of it, but I've seen people that do that. So you'll see this in many different places, reminding you of your journey to enlightenment, that it's not just rainbows and butterflies. It's not walking on clouds. It's some real hard work because you're looking inward and you're doing this reflective introspection within your own mind, and you're dealing with a lot of things that your mind's never dealt with in the past, and you're having to get those things out of the mind through training of the mind. So it can be really tough and really hard work as you're doing that. So this is the one that you'll see most commonly, but there's these others too, right? Because we understand that the world is not impermanent, that there's impermanence. And one thing we know about artists is they're very creative, and they come up with all these different ways to represent things. So what I did is I went out there and I found these other ones that you can see that are representing essentially the same thing, but they're slightly different, right? But they kind of have this same similarity, the way that they're moving upwards, and there's these back steps, and then it's narrowing in on the path and moving upward. And the same thing over here, that there's all this kind of like ickiness down here, but then you kind of get on the path and now you're moving forward, but having these backward steps and then ultimately making your way to enlightenment. So do you guys have any questions on this particular image or this symbol or anything that I've talked about the path? No questions? Okay. You have a question? No? Okay. I thought I saw somebody. Okay. So now let's go to the next one. This is what we refer to as a Dhamma wheel. You'll see this one in many different places in the world. The word Dhamma is a Pali word that means teachings. But if I were to call this a teachings wheel, it kind of sounds a little bit odd. So I still refer to it as a Dhamma wheel. This is actually representing the cycle of rebirth. The circle is representing the cycle of rebirth, helping you remember that you're in this cycle of rebirth. But then there's these 8 spokes that you see. These 8 individual spokes are representing the core central teaching of the Buddha. It's called the Eightfold Path. This is the escape out of the cycle of rebirth. This is the way to actually get to enlightenment. Getting to enlightenment means you're purifying your mind. You're doing this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. And that's the way to actually escape out of the cycle of rebirth. This is what's going to lead to enlightenment. So getting to enlightenment is to get to the point where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And you're experiencing all these other mental states, but also you're escaping out of the cycle of rebirth. You will never experience rebirth after you get to enlightenment in the cycle of rebirth. So these 8 spokes are representing this core central teaching of the Eightfold Path, which is what a student would typically start with when they're first learning on the path. They would start learning that, and they would learn that inside and out, backwards and forwards, like the back of your hand. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will be practicing the Eightfold Path perfectly because you've deeply understood it, you've deeply reflected on it to independently verify it, and you're deeply practicing it. So you need to bring your practice up to this Eightfold Path and then live your life that way for an extended period of time. So remembering this Eightfold Path and practicing it closely is what will actually produce enlightenment. So the Buddha would be interested in seeing his students to be able to remember this Eightfold Path. So if you'd been in a discourse with the Buddha and you understood the cycle of rebirth and you understood the Eightfold Path, when you saw this symbol on the side of a barn or something like that, it would remind you of this Eightfold Path. This 12 o'clock position here, this is symbolizing right view. For those of you guys that are familiar with the Eightfold Path, that's symbolizing right view. This symbol, this spoke here is symbolizing right intention. The 3 o'clock position is symbolizing right speech. This is symbolizing right action. The 6 o'clock position is right livelihood. This is symbolizing right effort. The 9 o'clock position is right mindfulness. And then this is right concentration. So there's actually teachings behind each one of these that you would need to learn using the original words of the Buddha. And as students are first learning this, they oftentimes take a few months to study it through the books and other resources that I share in the classes and courses and so forth. And then sometimes they like to sit down with me and almost teach it to me to be able to confirm that they actually have understood it. And then they can get help to see where they're not understanding it. So while this is a Dhamma wheel, what this particular picture is showing is it's functioning as what we call a temple marker. If you go to a temple complex, there's usually one building, which in English we would refer to as a main hall, but in Thai it's referred to as a sala. The sala will typically have 8 markers around the outside of the building. This is the main building of the temple complex, and these 8 markers are in the 8 directions of the compass. So there's a north marker, a south marker, a east marker, a west marker, and so forth. And then there's a northeast, a southeast, and so forth and so on in the 8 directions of the compass. When they build these buildings, it's raw land before they start, and they dig down into the earth, and they drop these big, large concrete balls down into the 8 directions of the compass. And then when they cover this up, they put these temple markers there. Not all the temples have the same marker. This is serving as a temple marker, but each temple has different types of markers. Because of impermanence, not everybody uses the same exact marker. But what these serve as is like, say you're going to a new temple, and let's just say this is a very large complex. This temple is pretty small, but other temples can have a very large complex. And let's just say your friend invites you to the temple and says, hey, there's this event on Sunday at 9 a.m. Would you like to come? And you're like, sure, I'd like to come. It's like, all right, I'll meet you there. Well, if you go to this large temple complex and you don't necessarily know where this event is, you look for the main building that has these temple markers. And that's where you'll know that the main event is happening inside the sala. And they'll have these 8 markers around. And these large concrete balls down in the ground, this is serving like for some reason that particular temple got destroyed and people come behind maybe 200 years later or 500 years later, they could find those large concrete balls in the ground and they would know that's where the main sala was built and that's where the main sala was constructed. So while there's 8 concrete balls around the 8 directions of the compass, in the middle of that area, in the middle of the floor of the main building, down deep in the ground, there's a 9th ball. There's a 9th one. They don't have a temple marker there because it's right in the middle of the floor of the main building, but there's a 9th one right in the middle. So that's what this is serving as, is a temple marker, but they're using this Dhamma wheel as a way to mark this off. And you'll see like pictures like this. This is just kind of like a cartoonish type image, but you'll see this in artwork. You'll see it in various settings that you'll see this Dhamma wheel being used. Here, I'm talking to a student at a local temple here. This is at Wat Umong. And you can see here, there's some statues of the Buddha. And there's actually a Dhamma wheel back here in the back. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a Dhamma wheel all the way in the back here. And if you go to this temple here, the main image of the Buddha, there's also a Dhamma wheel on the wall, painted on the wall. Here they actually have a physical one, but here at this temple, they have it painted on the wall. This Dhamma wheel is said to be on the head of a Buddha, and that when a Buddha awakens to enlightenment, they will reach up with their right hand and they will turn this Dhamma wheel counterclockwise. This Dhamma wheel isn't actually physically on the head of a Buddha, but figuratively it's on the head of a Buddha. And by a Buddha awakening to enlightenment, this would be the very best thing for the entire world, that now this wisdom that it takes to get to enlightenment is able to shine in the world. It can be very vibrant and available for countless people to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. So a Buddha getting to enlightenment, reaching up with their right hand and turning this Dhamma wheel figuratively that's on their head is like a symbol of humanity stepping forward into a new era. Because now with a Buddha being in existence, there would be the ability for countless people to be able to get to enlightenment. So there's kind of like a flat spot on the head of a Buddha where he reaches up and turns this Dhamma wheel counterclockwise. And now this is like humanity entering into a new era. So you will oftentimes see this Dhamma wheel placed behind the head of a Buddha as they use artwork and architecture, and they build temples and things like this. So do you guys have any questions on what a Dhamma wheel is or what it represents? You have a question? Yeah. Looks like Curtis has a question too.
sorry, maybe you mentioned it, but does these symbolisms happen to be did the Buddha or the symbolisms already been there when the Buddha was alive, like the first one you showed with the path, and this one?
As far as I know, they were created during the Buddha's lifetime, as far as I know. Mm-hmm.
Did they already had wheels? I thought about this too.
I'm sure they had wheels because they had carts and chariots and things like that. But this particular Dhamma wheel was created for his teachings, to remind people of his teachings. Mm-hmm.
My grandparents, they had a Dhamma wheel as a necklace or a pendant, and I still have it today. But I guess the question would be, should they wore it usually to a church service, but as like a reminder to probably practice the teachings, but also it seems in conflict of like the realization of non-self to like wear jewelry. So I don't know, like, what's the balance of like, should you wear it, but are you really trying to promote it or project an image to others? Or is it more beneficial to have it on you just to keep that reminder so you're living this path of the Eightfold Path?
Sure. So it's not like a black and white thing of whether you should wear something or you shouldn't wear it. The Buddha taught, of course, to realize non-self, as you know, to get to the point where you're not trying to project a certain image in the world. You're not clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are, because you'll be happy when you get agreeable contact and you'll be frustrated and angry when you have disagreeable contact. So you need to get to the point where you don't associate this self-image or self-identity of who you are as a person. And you can do that, and you can train your mind to realize non-self. And one of the things that you do in order to do that is to not wear jewelry. And some people will shave their hair and wear simple clothing and things like this. And you can do that for an extended period of time, and you'll get to the point where you'll know that your mind has eliminated personal existence view, because you won't become discontent any longer when people say things either positively or negatively about this body or any identity that's in the mind. You'll be able to see it for yourself. So someone might go through a period of time during their training period where they eliminate jewelry. That's a wise thing to be doing. But then once the mind is fully realized on self and you know that you're completely peaceful and joyful, someone might decide to wear some type of jewelry for a period of time or occasionally, or situations like this. So the Buddha's not sharing with you whether you should or shouldn't do those things, but he's showing you during this training period, to get rid of these pollutions, you're going to need to do those types of things for a period of time, oftentimes for multiple months and even years before the mind is going to eliminate something like personal existence view. But then someone might ultimately decide to start wearing those types of things in the future, but they would probably do it more sporadically rather than like every single day wearing something like that. And their mind at that point isn't trying to project any kind of image to other people. They might just be wearing it because they enjoy it and they like the way it looks and they would like to share it with other people. So it's not necessarily about the action. It's about what's going on in your mind and how your mind is thinking about this action. Mm-hmm. Marta, you have a question?
About the kind of color, or why is it gold often, right? You know, because I would expect that maybe, and in the temples there's a lot of gold Buddhas as well. And why do you think we right now perceive it as gold?
Yeah, Thai people use gold a lot. Let me first just kind of talk about what a temple is, because that kind of helps you to understand why they use gold so much. Is the way that I think about a temple is I think about it like a womb of a woman. The womb of a woman is the very best place to learn or to be able to grow into a better human being, right? Without the womb of a woman, none of us would be here today, right? That there was an egg and a sperm that came together and we grew into this human being through the womb of a woman. So the womb of a woman is the very best place to grow into a human being. And the way that I think about a temple, it's the same thing. It's like the womb of a woman. It's a place to grow and develop into a very good and very best human being, because a temple is like a learning center. It's a cultural center. It's a place to be able to come and grow into a better and better human being. And that's the way I think about the womb of a woman. Another way we might think about it is we might think about it like a mental health center, right? That there's this mental health network all over Thailand that has been created over multiple centuries. And the Thai people have invested in this mental health network that is purely based in donations, where oftentimes for some of us, we come from a country, whereas if we would like mental health support, we might need to pay several $100s just for a 1 hour visit. And now we get whatever help that we're looking for. Where here in Thailand, it's completely available at no cost, that you can go into this womb of the woman. You can go into this learning center, this cultural center, find somebody like me. You can find a ordained practitioner or a teacher and sit down with somebody that is able to help you to be able to understand your mind, to understand the world around you, to help you with personal, professional challenges that you might be facing. And you can build up a relationship with this person to be able to have ongoing, consistent support. So the Thai people tend to build villages or build temples in just about every village. You can go to, all over the country if you guys have been traveling throughout Thailand, and you'll see a temple in just about every village, because they're very interested in having these temples available for themselves. So they will collectively put their money together and their resources to be able to build and construct this temple so that it's available for them, so that as the villagers are having challenges, both personally or professionally, they have a place to go to be able to find people that can actually help them. Because the people who are living at the temple, like ordained practitioners, they're actually living in that womb and they're growing and developing consistently over a long-term period, or at least that's the way the Buddha shared that this is what would be ideal, is for ordained practitioners to be living in the temple, and now they grow and develop over a consistent long-term period, and now they have lots of wisdom to be able to help people. Where household practitioners, we enter in and out of that womb on a daily basis. But nonetheless, you can see the idea here is that the pooling of resources from community members who have decided on their own voluntarily to either donate land or donate resources or supplies, they now construct this temple so that it's available for everybody. And anybody can walk into that environment without any expectation of anything in return and be able to get the help that they need. So most villagers, if they're familiar with this, they would be interested in having this temple in their village. So the Thai people will pool their resources and contribute to this. And oftentimes the temples are way more beautiful and way more elaborate than anything that they're actually living in themselves as a house, because they're more interested in seeing the collective benefit of the group rather than kind of showing off their own wealth or their own ability to, have a beautiful home for themselves. Instead, they like to have this community center that we can all contribute to and build up and make beautiful, and now we can all benefit from that. So oftentimes they will use this golden color as a reminder for you that it's not money and wealth that is going to lead to your happiness, because that's what people oftentimes think, is that it's money or wealth or material possessions that's going to lead to happiness. And that's what the mind will tend to do, is it'll chase after money, or it'll chase after wealth or material possessions. And if you get what you want, you get happy and excited about that. But if you don't get what you want, your mind will be sad or frustrated or angry or irritated. So oftentimes we grow up with the idea that there's some external thing that's going to create lasting happiness. So the mind will chase and chase and chase and chase and chase, where in reality, it's not those external things that are going to lead to permanent happiness. Because if money and wealth led to happiness, then rich people would never kill themselves, because their life would be completely happy and joyful, and they would just have a wonderful grand time because they're so rich and so wealthy. And now you would never see anybody rich kill themselves because they're so happy, if money created happiness. But that's not the case. We can see that there's plenty of rich people, there's plenty of famous people that actually kill themselves because money and fame isn't what leads to happiness. It's training your mind that leads to that. So this golden color, this is a reminder for you of this, that money doesn't lead to happiness. It's actually training your mind. That's what's going to lead to happiness. It's not material wealth and material objects that's going to lead to your peace and joy. So all these temples that have all this golden color, it's helping you to remember that. And that's another symbol that is helping you to now remember part of the teachings, is because the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate this longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of your perfection and trying to get happiness from something external. Because as soon as you allow the mind to keep chasing after external things for happiness, you might get what you want in this situation and you might be happy temporarily. But as soon as that thing changes, now you will be sad or frustrated or irritated. And I'll just use a simple example. Like if you get really happy and excited when it's sunny outside, you'll get frustrated, agitated when it's raining. The only thing that's happened here is change, right? So if you base your happiness on some material object like the sun is not permanent. And that's why your happiness isn't permanent. That's why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the unenlightened mind is basing its inner feelings on some impermanent object. If you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, you will become sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. You can see that it's not other people that are causing you to be angry and frustrated. It's the mind craving permanence, that as long as the mind's getting what it wants, it's happy. But when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or sad or frustrated. The only thing that's happened here is change. But the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't understand change. It craves permanence. And it thinks that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases after it. So this golden color can help remind you of this. And that's why it's typically used. There's a temple up in Chiang Mai. I don't know if some of you guys have been to it or not. It's called the White Temple. Have you guys, anybody been to that one yet in Chiang Rai? Yeah, some of you guys. Yeah. This White Temple, there was an artist who created it, and I think it's still under construction. They're still working on it. But he made the bathroom gold. And apparently I've seen a documentary of him talking about why he did that. He said that he was teaching people that, you basically poop out your money, that it's not worth anything. It's not going to create any happiness or anything like that. So all the rest of the temple is like different colors, or there's white mostly, but there's other buildings too. But then the bathroom is golden to remind people of, just poop out your wealth, that it's not going to lead to happiness. But that's not to say that wealth is bad, right? Sometimes people think money is bad, wealth is bad. This isn't actually true. You can actually be wealthy and enlightened. It's possible. Right. But the difference is that an enlightened being who's wealthy, they would have acquired their money ethically and morally responsibly ways without causing harm to others. And they wouldn't be tied to their wealth. They would be willing to give and share with the people around them instead of hoarding it just for themselves and being indulgent in their wealth. Right. But if we acquire our money in ways that's causing harm to others, and then we're tied to our wealth and we're not willing to share it, this is where the mind's going to be discontent. You're going to be angry and frustrated and sad as things are changing in your life. But if you are able to create a business as an enlightened being that generates a certain amount of money, that as an enlightened being, your mind's performing optimally, you understand the natural laws, you're going to have wonderful relationships with the people around you, you'll be fully capable, if you're interested, to create a business that is very successful. And now if it's generating all this money, you're going to be doing it ethically and in a morally responsible way. But then as you're accumulating wealth, you'll be completely comfortable with sharing it with people and donating it to charitable situations. And sure, maybe you're living a certain lifestyle where you have really nice cars, really nice clothes, and you eat at nice restaurants and things like this, but you're also doing things to be able to share your resources with others. So sometimes people think that, money is all bad or it's all good, right? That's like the black and white of the world. The people might chase after money, think it's going to lead to this happiness, but then you have people all the way on the other side that think money is horrible and it's the evil of all bad things in the world. This isn't true. There's this middle way where you can actually acquire money and you can acquire wealth and then just not be attached to it and form your emotions and feelings based on how much money you have for yourself. So this is a way to help you remember these kinds of things. Any other questions on this one? Let me see if we have anything online. Okay, I don't see any questions online. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. This is the lotus flower. you're actually going to see plenty of lotus flowers in Buddhist artwork and temples and different places in Buddhist culture. A lotus flower is actually symbolizing enlightenment and your journey to enlightenment. If you understand how a lotus flower grows, so let's talk about that first. A lotus flower has roots that are deep down into the earth, and typically it's growing in a pond. So there's like murky mud on the bottom of the pond, and the roots are deep down into the murky water, right, and into the earth, and it's holding on to the earth. But then you need to grow this strong stalk of the plant in order to rise through the murkiness of the water. And then when it grows this strong stalk, it rises through the murkiness of the water, and then ultimately it rises above the water and it blooms as a lotus flower. So a bloomed lotus flower is a symbol of enlightenment. And you will oftentimes see this like around the base of a statue of the Buddha or around the Buddha, because people knew that he was enlightened. So they will tend to put this bloomed lotus flower around the Buddha. But this is actually symbolizing your journey to enlightenment, because what the unenlightened mind does is it holds on to the earth. It holds on to the world. It holds on to your money. It holds on to your relationships. It holds on to your clothes and your jewelry and your this and your that and your this and your that. And the mind's holding on to all these different things. But then you need to grow this strong practice based in wisdom. You need to grow this strong practice. The stalk needs to rise through the murkiness of the world. The water is usually murky as the lotus flower is growing, and the world is murky as well. There's a lot of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, substances that cause heedlessness. There's all kinds of things that are going on in the world, and you're going to need to have this strong wisdom to rise through that and above it. And then that's where you can bloom as a lotus flower. And while we talk about this, it's not like you're above somebody, right? It's not this hierarchy or this pecking order. That would be what the unenlightened mind experiences. But in the enlightened mind, we understand that it's unwise to judge people, and it's unwise to have a pecking order in your mind where you think you're above people or you're below people. So while we talk about a lotus flower rising above the murkiness of the world and blooming, it's just kind of a simile to be able to help you, or a story to be able to help you understand what you're doing. But you're not truly above people. That's not the way we think about it, right? So a bloomed lotus flower like this is symbolizing enlightenment, where a closed lotus flower is symbolizing your potential to get to enlightenment, because not every lotus flower will actually bloom. Some will bloom and some won't. This is impermanence. This is the impermanent nature of the world. So you'll usually see a lot of closed lotus flowers in temples and in artwork. Of course, you're going to see bloomed ones as well, particularly around the Buddha. But when you see a closed lotus flower, this is reminding you that you have the potential to get to enlightenment and not to allow this life to go to waste, right? Because oftentimes the mind is complacent in the unenlightened state because there's all these sensual desires. The mind is holding on to things and it doesn't truly want to let go. So the mind tends to hold on and hold on and hold on. So the mind can oftentimes be complacent. So this is to remind you that you have the potential, and don't be complacent. Don't allow this life to go to waste, because getting into the human life is the very best thing that could ever happen for you. This human existence that you have the ability in this human life to be able to get to enlightenment. Whereas if we were animals, we wouldn't be able to do that, because an animal, while they can evolve to a certain point to then become a human, they themselves in that animal existence can actually make their way to enlightenment, because they don't have the capability to fully cultivate their mind in the same way as a human being. So now that you're in this human realm, the Buddha teaches you not to allow it to go to waste through complacency. Apply dedication, determination, and diligence to growing and developing on the path. So that's what this closed lotus flower is helping you to remind you to not be complacent and to use this human life and continue to be diligent and determined on the path to enlightenment. So any questions on this one? No questions? Okay. So now I went out and looked for some other symbols, right? Because as I said, artists are very creative and they come up with all kinds of different things. So I'm going to teach you a lot of the main symbols that you're going to see in artwork and architecture. But there's other ones out there too. Because of the creativity of artists, you're going to see lots of different things in the world with these symbols. And you'll see some that I haven't even taught you. But if you understand some of these basic ones that I'm sharing with you, when you see one that you haven't ever seen before or that I haven't taught you about, about, you'll be able to figure out what that means. So this particular symbol here, I just taught you guys what this means, this circle and this traveling along this path. I taught you that. And then I just taught you what this means too. So you can look at this symbol and you can say, they're trying to denote enlightenment. So even when you see symbols in a temple or an artwork that you've never actually seen before, if you understand a lot of these basic ones that I'm sharing with you, you can kind of decipher what it is that the artist is trying to represent. So that's why I put this one in the book and I put this one into the class today. So here, this is the last one, I think. Oh, we have two more, actually. This is one that you'll see a lot, these large snakes. And you usually see these at the base of stairs going up to a temple. And you can see them here as well, this little ordination hall. So I'm going to share with you guys the story of this snake, and I'll explain to you what is taught in the original teachings in the Pali Canon. But understand that when I tell you this story, I suspect that it's not true, but I'll tell you the story regardless, because there's certain lessons that you can learn from this, right? So oftentimes, as you know, teachings are being handed down from person to person to person, people kind of change the teachings or they kind of embellish upon the teachings. And this could be one of those cases. I don't know. I wasn't there when these things were occurring, so I can't say whether this is actually true or false, this story that I'm sharing with you, but I can share with you afterwards, after I share the story, I can share with you certain lessons that are going to help you in your journey to enlightenment. So nonetheless, here's the story. So there's this large snake that is said to have lived during the lifetime of the Buddha. And apparently this large snake was very close to being reborn into the human realm. So it could transition itself to look like a human being. And it could make itself look like a monk, and it would put on an orange robe and have a shaved hair. It would look just like a human being. And it would apparently go into the places where the Buddha was teaching, and it would sit there and try to learn the teachings of the Buddha in order to be able to train its mind to get to enlightenment. And the way that the Buddha would teach is he would teach for very long time frames, sometimes multiple hours. And learning the teachings of a Buddha is very challenging. It can be a lot of work for the mind to be able to learn and understand the teachings, because your mind thinks in one way, and to be able to upgrade this operating system to come to this new understanding is very challenging for the mind. So oftentimes, as the Buddha was teaching for these really long periods of time, people would start falling asleep. Now, you might see that as being disrespectful, but the Buddha understood that people's minds were working and being challenged. So as people would fall asleep, he would just sit and wait for people to wake up. And then when they woke up, he would then start teaching again. So as he was teaching one day, and the snake was in there with amongst all of his students, they started falling asleep. And as they fell asleep, this snake also fell asleep as well, looking like a human being. But because it had this consciousness that could transition itself to look like a human being, it could only do that when it was awake. So when it fell asleep, it started to look like a snake again. It transitioned back to looking like a snake. So as all these ordained practitioners were waking up, they saw this snake, and now they started becoming fearful and they were scared. Well, they decided to go get the Buddha, because an individual who's gotten to enlightenment, they don't have any fear any longer. You don't even fear your own death. That by the time you get to enlightenment, there's no fear in the mind whatsoever. So they went and got the Buddha, and the Buddha came over to where the snake was, and the snake was slowly starting to wake up. And the Buddha asked the snake, like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you here? And the snake says, oh, I would like to learn your teachings. I would like to get to enlightenment. And the Buddha's like, oh, you can't get to enlightenment. You're in the human, or you're in the animal realm. You're not able to get to enlightenment. And the snake's like, no, I want to get to enlightenment. I really want to get to enlightenment. And the Buddha was like, oh, it's not possible for you. Your mind's not going to be capable of being able to get to enlightenment. But it appears that you're very close to being reborn in the human realm, that in your next life, it seems like you're going to get into the human realm, and that's the time that you can actually learn in my teachings and practice them and actually get to enlightenment. And the snake's like, no, I want to do it now. I want to get to enlightenment now. And the Buddha's like, yes, I understand, but I'm teaching all these human beings, and they're having a lot of fear because they're not enlightened yet. And if I could ask you to leave, that would be best, so that I can teach these human beings. And then in your next life, this is where you can learn the teachings. And the snake's like, okay, if you're not going to let me stay here and learn with you, then I'm going to go outside and I'm going to stand guard. And if anybody tries to come in to learn your teachings who has ill will towards your teachings, then I'm not going to let them pass by. Having ill will towards the teachings of a Buddha is to be interested in changing them. As soon as you change the teachings of a Buddha, they're no longer going to be effective at helping people get to enlightenment. So a Buddha spends their entire life from the time that they're enlightened until they die, illuminating the path to enlightenment and making it very clear for people of what it takes to get to enlightenment, because they figured out how to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. And now they spend their time to help other people understand that path. So if somebody was to change the teachings of a Buddha, it's like knocking over those lights. And now people can't see very clearly what is the path to enlightenment. So having ill will towards the teachings of the Buddha would be interested to change them. And the Buddha talks about this, and he talks about how it would be harming yourself and it would be harming countless people if you changed his teachings, because you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment, and then countless people learning those same things that you're sharing that aren't his teachings, they wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment either. So this is the story. Now, I don't know whether this occurred or not because I wasn't there. So I don't know that it's true, but I don't know that it's false. I've never met a snake or seen a snake that can transition itself to look like a human, unless maybe someone here, maybe, I don't know, maybe. I've never seen it, right? So it could have happened. Scientists tell us that 99% of the animals that once existed no longer exist today. So what we are seeing in the animal realm is 1% of animals that once existed. So maybe there was something 2,500 years ago that could do this. I don't know. But nonetheless, there's certain lessons here that you can learn from this. The first one is that enlightened beings don't have fear. So when you see this snake at the bottom of the steps, as you're making your way up, it can remind you that enlightened beings don't have fear. That's the first one, right? The second one is, thank goodness that you're in the human realm, right? Because you can actually make your way to enlightenment. Because here you see this snake, and as soon as you're going into the temple, you're like, thank goodness I'm human, because I can make my way to enlightenment. And then the third thing is that if you're going to come to the temple and you're going to learn the teachings, it's important for you to learn the teachings as the Buddha shared them through his own words, and not be interested in changing his teachings. If you tried to change his teachings, it would cause harm to you and countless other people. So these are the three lessons that you can learn from seeing this particular snake. And you'll see it pretty commonly. In fact, we have it here at this temple. Over there at the main hall, the snakes are standing there, right? They're standing guard, reminding you that thank goodness you're human, because you can get to enlightenment, that enlightened beings don't have any fear, and that it would be unwise to have ill will towards the teachings of the Buddha in changing them, because it's going to cause harm to you and countless other people. So do you guys have questions on this one? Yes, ma'am. It'll be on. The people online won't be able to hear you. There's a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. How does an animal move from the animal realm to the human realm if they don't have the moral capacity of humans?
Sure. So each one of these animal existences, there's a different type of consciousness. So for example, like a lion, their consciousness are going to be very bitter, very harsh, very aggressive. They're going to be killing regularly in order to eat and things like this. But let's just say that lion is reborn into a rabbit or a squirrel or something like this. That particular being, their mind isn't as harsh and aggressive and hostile and bitter. So now their consciousness has improved. So now it's much more likely for an animal like an elephant or a turtle or a rabbit or a squirrel, animals like this, to be reborn into the human realm. It's not to say that a lion couldn't be, because they could be reborn into the human realm, but it's less likely. So as an animal is bouncing around into these different existences in the animal realm, their consciousness is improving by way of that existence. And the Buddha describes being in the animal realm as like a prison, that you're in there countless rebirths before you ever get a chance to get to the human realm. And that's why he encourages you not to allow this human life to go to waste. So that's how it occurs, by just having a different type of existence. Nowadays, we see a lot of animals that are actually living with human beings or having a lot of interaction with human beings. And because of that interaction, we're seeing more and more animals coming into the human realm. This is why the animal realm is shrinking. The human realm is expanding. We see this. Like in Cambodia, there was a rat that was trained to sniff out landmines. And this rat lived for like 6 years, I think, and it found like 100 different landmines. So that's a certain amount of generosity that this rat practiced, a certain amount of loving kindness and compassion. Even though it was trained by human beings to do this, it was still its own free will choices that it chose to do this. But that rat left on its own wouldn't have been able to do that, right? But it still would have, bounced around into different existences and eventually cultivated its consciousness to a certain degree. But with human interaction, we've actually domesticated a lot of animals, and more we see animals moving into the human realm because of this training that they've been able to experience and the benefits of living side by side with human beings. Mm-hmm. These are Buddhist microphones. You have to be patient with them. You press the button and you wait like 2 seconds and then they actually work. I think they're letting you go. Yeah.
So may I ask, what are the symbolism of dragons? Because we see many dragons.
Oh, dragons.
Dragons in China and Thailand. And I also wonder if it's also very frequently seen in other countries.
Yeah, I haven't done any kind of studying on that. I haven't seen anything like that in the original teachings of the Buddha about dragons. I haven't seen him talk about dragons. I suspect that dragons are mythical creatures, and there's none of that kind of stuff in the teachings of the Buddha, that he's only teaching the truth. He's not going to teach some kind of false thing or something that didn't truly exist. There's not going to be beliefs in his teachings. Now, stories could make their way into the Pali Canon, which is the original source teachings of the Buddha that didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha, because we know that everything the Buddha taught does not exist in the Pali Canon. This is the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha. Everything he taught is not in this collection of materials. And we also know that not everything that's in the Pali Canon was actually taught by the Buddha, because it would be naive of us to think that a document that was created 2,500 years ago has never changed since then, because we know the world's full of change. So I haven't seen anything in the Pali Canon about dragons or anything like that. But I do see them in places like China and different places, and I don't know what those people would say that symbolism means. I just don't have that information.
Perhaps it's just some localized images.
Yeah, there's usually different beliefs that people have and things that people talk about, but I have no idea. Mm-hmm. Marta?
I actually have a question from Mia. Mm-hmm. And Mia would like to ask, what are the meanings of the paintings in the temple, or why there are paintings in the temple?
Why are there paintings in the temple? So the paintings help us to remember things, right? It helps us to know a story, that in just one image, it can help us to recall a certain story in our mind. So maybe if you saw like a painting of a princess and a prince, maybe you would think about romance or love or something like this, right? So just one image can capture kind of a full story, and it can help you remember things. Most of the paintings that you see in Thai temples, though, they're actually not connected to the teachings of the Buddha. It's more about Thai folk traditions and kind of traditional stories that they have had for many, many centuries. They will sometimes put the Buddha in those images, but oftentimes if you understand what they're actually representing, it doesn't actually have anything to do with the Buddha, but they'll make it to be something about the Buddha, but they're beautiful. They're nice images to look at. They tell a story, and maybe there's some moral or some lesson that you can learn from that story. But oftentimes the ones that you see, they're actually not really truly connected to the Buddha's teachings, or they're so graphic from the artist that they've kind of taken something from the Buddha and they made it like more graphic. Like here in this temple, if you walk into the main building and you turn around and you look up behind you, there's going to be 5 individual artworks, and this is representing the 5 precepts, which is a teaching from the Buddha where he teaches you how it's unwise to kill, to steal, to have sexual misconduct, to lie and take substances that cause heedlessness. But the artist took this like really far. They're like showing you like what it would be like to be in hell if you didn't practice these things. And there's like fear in they're trying to elicit, kind of like this fear and this scared feeling, which is not what the Buddha actually did. He didn't use guilt, shame, and fear in order to help you eliminate guilt, shame, and fear. He used wisdom to be able to help you see that wisdom. But sometimes the artist will take it really far. So here there is an artwork in the main building that's connected to the teachings of the Buddha, but they've taken it, to a pretty far place from where the Buddha was actually teaching. Mm-hmm.
Are the original Pali Canon, are they housed somewhere? Where are they?
Yeah, nowadays it's actually online. You can find multiple different translations. There's probably about 4 to 6 different main translators that translated the original words of the Buddha, but they're using different words from person to person to person because they don't agree on what the words actually mean, because it's no longer a spoken language. And even a spoken language like English, we don't even agree what words mean today. And, one person can think it means one thing and another person can think it means another thing. So you can find these translations online. There's actually some people that you can print, they're printed and they're in hard copy format. I provide here with our books an extract, because these 45 volumes of books, it would probably take you a good 10 years to actually read through them all. And there's a lot of repetition in it, because that's the way the Buddha taught, was with a lot of repetition. So you could read the Pali Canon, say like 100 pages of the Pali Canon, and there's maybe like 2 lessons in that 100 pages because there's such repetition. Where the way that this book series is constructed is in 100 pages, you're probably going to get about 200 different important things to learn. So this is like a more approachable way to learn in a consolidated form. So I would encourage a student that is interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha to use the book series that I share, but understand that it's coming from this Pali Canon. And if you'd ever like to go back to look at the Pali Canon, we have the references in our books to be able to take you back, because then you might be able to see what the Buddha was saying before or afterwards. But it is available for people, but it's typically something that the average person doesn't usually have because it's so expensive to print it out. And that's why I give it away for free. That's why you can take it and go print it yourself. That's why it's been consolidated, because then if you do print it out, it's actually not so costly to be able to print it out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yes, ma'am. You have a microphone back there?
Hello. I like to circle back to the rats and the snake. So, in order for them to reach enlightenment, they have to accumulate some sort of merit, right?
They'll need to accumulate wholesome karma. So by them moving, say, from a lion existence to a turtle, there's more wholesome karma as a turtle. Wholesome karma meaning wholesome results, because now they're not killing for their food. They're not so aggressive and hostile and bitter. So their pollution of mind has been decreased. That's what determines where you're actually reborn, is the quality of your mind or the status of the mind at the time of death. that's what's going to determine your rebirth. So as a lion or a snake, for example, there's a lot of hostility, a lot of bitterness in the mind because they're constantly killing just to survive. So the level of pollution is much higher. But for this turtle or this rabbit, the pollution is much lower. And now at the time of death, that particular being is now going to be reborn into another existence, which can be an improved existence. So they're accumulating wholesome karma through having less pollution in their mind. They're making wiser decisions about their day-to-day life. So it's this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result, we call the natural law of karma, that is determining whether you are going to be reborn or what realm you're going to be reborn into and what the condition is. So there's no being that's overseeing this or anything like this. It's just a sequence of events, cause and effect. Just like the natural law of gravity affects all of us, whether we're aware of it or not, this natural law affects all of us, whether we're aware of it or not, in terms of what we experience on a day-to-day basis. And you can independently verify this natural law through developing your understanding of the path to enlightenment through the teachings of the Buddha.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And to
You're
follow
welcome.
up on that,
I think your mic might have turned off, or maybe you're just not holding it up high enough. Okay.
okay. To follow up on that, regarding us as humans right now, so we're trying to, or if we don't reach enlightenment within this lifetime, so there are possibilities that we might be reborn in other realms.
For a human being?
Yes.
Yeah. So a human being, any of these beings, even in the animal realm and other realms as well, they can be reborn in and out of any of these realms. So just because you're in a human realm now doesn't mean you're going to be reborn back into the human realm in a future life. It all depends on the quality of your mind at the time of death. So if an individual now is let's just say they're functioning in a certain way, either disgruntled and angry or frustrated, or maybe they're having quite a fair amount of peacefulness throughout your life, your mind can go up or down depending on what your choices are, depending on what you choose to do in training your mind. So this path to enlightenment is to become a better and better human being, training your mind, reducing and eliminating the pollutions out of your mind. And that's what's going to create more and more peacefulness for you. So if you're going forward like this and you die, you're going to either be reborn back into the human realm or into the heavenly realm. But the heavenly realm is not a permanent existence, and it's not the ideal existence. You'd actually rather be in the human realm because you have built-in motivation to be able to make your way to enlightenment, because the beings in the heavenly realm, they only experience pleasant feelings, so they tend to be complacent. And even human beings, even though we experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant in the unenlightened state, there's even a fair amount of complacency in the human realm too, but there tends to be built-in motivation in the human realm. So yes, human beings can be reborn in any of the different realms. The Buddha taught the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirits, which are ghosts. He taught the human realm and the heavenly realm, and these can all be independently verified. There's no belief in these teachings at all. It's just that someone doesn't necessarily have the wisdom of how to independently verify it as they're first getting started on the path. But a human being can go down, but they can go up, or they can even come back into the human realm. But ultimately, you would like to be able to train your mind to get to enlightenment in this life, and you can see that your mind's actually doing that because your mind's becoming more and more peaceful. And you can see in situations where you're once angry and frustrated and agitated and annoyed, that now after you've been training your mind, that same exact situation, your mind's quite peaceful and joyful. So this is a very unique thing about the teachings of the Buddha, that you can see in this life that you're actually headed in the direction of enlightenment, because you can see the evidence of that. Where oftentimes people are teaching you to believe a bunch of things and then hope something good happens when you die, you have no indication of whether you're believing properly or not, because there's no ability for you to see that. But with the teachings of the Buddha, you can actually see the condition of your mind improving. And that's what you would like to do. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the world that don't even know these teachings exist or how to actually apply them in their day-to-day life. So people can backslide and they can go deeper into the darkness and the disgruntledness and the pollution of mind, and they can go down into the hell realm or the animal realm or the afflicted spirit realm. But if they do, they will have future opportunities to then once again be reborn into the human realm or heavenly realm in order to get to enlightenment. But there's these countless rebirths that have to happen in those lower realms in order to now get another opportunity to come into the human realm. And that's why the Buddha referred to the hell realm and the animal realm like a prison, but you're not in there permanently. You will eventually move your way out of those realms. And that's also why he taught to not allow this human life to go to waste, because it's a great opportunity for you to learn and grow and develop and experience an improved and better way of life. Yep.
If a human dies in the first stage of enlightenment, do they have 7 consecutive possibilities of rebirth, or are there lower rebirths in between these?
Once an individual gets to the first stage of enlightenment, they will never be reborn back into the lower realms ever again. They've escaped that because they've developed their mind to a certain degree to that first stage of enlightenment, that they've become a better human being at that point. And that's why if they die, they're going to come back into the world as a human being, because they've transcended anything that would cause them to be reborn into the lower realms. Mm-hmm. Okay. One more? You have another one? Yeah, go for it. Maybe I can answer this time.
We all long for the status of enlightenment, but for us, common, normal people, how do we know that we have achieved it?
The way you'll know you achieved enlightenment is that you won't experience any discontent feelings for 1 to 3 years. That you won't be angry, frustrated, irritated, annoyed, bitter, hostile, harsh. You won't be arguing with people. You won't have guilt, shame, fear in your mind. There won't be any stress or anxiety. There's no loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. You won't even have the slightest ickiness in your mind. Your mind will just always be cheerful, bright, radiant, glad, and uplifted. You'll notice that you'll have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. All your relationships will be harmonious. You won't even have a bad mood any longer. You'll have sustainable energy all day long, where from the time you wake up until the time you go to sleep, you'll be able to have sustainable energy all day long. Where what an unenlightened being will do is they'll go out into the world and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase, and they'll feel great. And it's a wonderful day when things are going their way. But when things aren't going their way, they'll be angry and frustrated and irritated, and they'll swing all the way to the other side where they'll be exhausted and tired and dull and lazy and lethargic. But when you come to the middle, you're not chasing any longer. So therefore, you're not swinging to the other side where you're dull and lethargic. You're just gradually pursuing your goals, objectives, or interests each day with enthusiasm and ambition. And your mind can be bright and cheerful and uplifted all day long. And you'll see that this is the case for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Your mind has been like that. And you would have seen glimpses of this on your way to it. So it's not like one day you're unenlightened and the next day you're enlightened. It's not like that. That it's kind of like if you have the sun and then there's clouds in front of the sun and you peel away those clouds, the rays of the sun are going to start to slowly shine through. It's the same thing with enlightenment. Even though we call it attaining enlightenment, one of the ways you might think about it is that the mind is already enlightened. And now as you get these pollutions out of the mind, the qualities of enlightenment will start shining through slowly but surely. So you can experience sometimes 1 week, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, where your mind's quite peaceful and quite joyful. And that'll gradually increase as you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment. That's what's happening back here when you're experiencing, this forward progress. While you're making missteps and you're having these backward steps, as you're going forward, you're going to notice these longer and longer periods of time of peace and joy in the mind, because you're getting rid of more and more of the pollution in the mind. But even though you're getting a week or 2 or a month or 2 of peace and joy, your mind can then experience some discontentedness again because it's not enlightened yet. But then once you deal with that forever, however many days or weeks that you need to deal with those particular cravings and get rid of them, now your mind's going to come back to the peacefulness for an extended period of time. And it'll typically even last longer now because you have less cravings in your mind. But eventually you'll get to the point where those qualities are just always on. So this enlightenment, it's not like a light switch that you flip a switch and then your light is on. When you flip a switch, if it's an old time light bulb, it'll flicker and flicker and flicker, 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 boom, now it's on. That's the way enlightenment is that when you start practicing this path and you're gradually training your mind, these qualities of enlightenment will kind of flicker for a period of time, for an elongated period of time, before finally, it's on for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. But it'll flicker for 2 months, 3 months. You can see your mind. You can even go as long as 6 months as you're in that third stage of enlightenment, because your mind's not actually enlightened until the fourth stage. Even in that third stage of enlightenment, you can go 6 months without any discontentedness. And then here comes a little bit of discontentedness. It's very insignificant when it occurs, maybe like 30 seconds, and the people around you won't even know. It's just kind of inwardly in your own mind, and you'll be able to stamp it out really quickly, but you'll have just a little bit, and then it'll be gone, right? And you'll experience more and more of that peace and joy for elongated periods of time, and that's how you'll know you're enlightened.
I only have like 30 seconds a day of enlightenment.
Yeah, so there's no such thing as temporary enlightenment, but we might call those kind of things temporary enlightenment, right? Like you're sitting on a park bench and maybe for like 10 minutes, you're like, I don't need anything. I could just sit here all day long. It feels so peaceful and joyful just to sit here on this bench. And that lasts for about 10 minutes. And then you're like, I got to go. I don't really want to go. That's the discontentedness, because your mind's holding on to this park bench and you're holding on to this view that you're seeing, and you want it to be permanent when in reality it's not permanent. So you need to get to the point where you're comfortable with impermanence in order to be able to get to this point where your mind is permanently peaceful and permanently joyful. So you can experience, even without being on the path, you can experience little tiny, minute here, 5 minutes there, where your mind's completely at peace and completely joyful. But it doesn't last because there's still pollution in the mind. Okay. So now one more that I'll share with you guys. I don't see any questions online. This is a tree that is in northeast India, where the Buddha actually contemplated for 7 weeks of whether or not he should share his teachings. He studied himself and trained his mind himself for 6 years to be able to get to enlightenment. And after those 6 years of training, he knew his teachings were radically different than anybody's teachings at the time. At the time, people were thinking that if you could hang yourself upside down from trees, if you could lay on beds of nails, if you pierce the body with metal implements, if you starve the body, that if you caused physical pain to the body and your mind could overcome that pain, that then you would get to enlightenment. And the Buddha was aware that those things were going on, but when he trained his mind and he figured out how to get to enlightenment, he realized that wasn't part of the path, that had nothing to do with getting to enlightenment whatsoever. So he knew his teachings were radically different than anything that anybody else was sharing at the time. So he hangs out at this tree for 7 weeks contemplating whether he should go back to the royal palace because he was a prince destined to become a king, or whether he should go share his teachings with other people, because he didn't think the world was ready to hear what it is that he had to share about how to actually get to enlightenment. Well, ultimately, we know what he did is he did decide to go share his teachings, right? But he hung out at this tree for 7 weeks. And at one point when he was getting close to death, his students asked him what they should do when people come to see him, because he was so enlightened that he actually knew he was going to die 3 months before he was going to die. He informed his students. He said, essentially, just so you know, I'm going to be dying in about 3 months. And of course, he said it differently than that, but that's what he did, is he gave everybody a heads up. And they said, well, what are we going to do when people come here to see you and pay respect to you and you're not here? Because, they couldn't send out an email to everybody and say, hey, by the way, the Buddha's dead, no need to come here, right? They couldn't do that. So there were people all over the countryside, many countless people, and they were coming. They would have been coming, even though the Buddha's dead, they would have been coming to see him. And they asked him, what can we do when all these people are coming to see you? And he said, well, there's these 4 sites that you can go visit if you would like to arise dedication. The place where I was born, the place where I got to enlightenment, the place where I gave my very first talk about the teachings of what it takes to get to enlightenment, and the place of my death, wherever I die. You could visit these 4 places. And all these 4 places are essentially in that region of the world that we're talking about, which is Nepal and Northeast India. And you can actually go visit them and actually see them for yourself. So that's what this tree is this is the tree that the Buddha was hanging out at. So this is in English referred to as a Bodhi tree. That's how we refer to it. But there's other names for it as well. There's a Latin name for it, a scientific name, and so forth. But this particular tree, it has this interesting shape of leaf that you don't really see anywhere else. It's just this tree. So this shape of this leaf is actually also a symbol of enlightenment. And it's kind of reminding you of enlightenment itself, because the Buddha hung out at this tree for 7 weeks and he kind of declared it as the location where he got to enlightenment. But ultimately he got to enlightenment over a 6-year period, right? So this is why people oftentimes are confused, thinking that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated and instantly got to enlightenment, because he denoted this tree as the location of where he actually got to enlightenment, where in reality, he got to enlightenment over a 6-year period. It wasn't just sitting at this tree that he got to enlightenment. So whenever you see this leaf of this tree in artwork, it's a symbol of enlightenment, reminding you of enlightenment. And if you'd like to see this leaf in real life, we actually have one here at this temple. As you're making your way out of the main temple gate, if you look over to your left or you look down on the ground, you're going to see these leaves. There's a tree here at this temple, and there's one down the street a little bit too. So you can actually see these leaves in real life. So if you'd like to see it, you can actually see it in real life. And you can actually go to this place. I'm actually going in a few weeks. We're taking a student trip, and I'm going to tour some students around, and we're going to have a retreat where we're going to visit all these sites and others in Northeast India and Nepal. And we're going to go visit this particular tree as well. But you'll see this leaf in a lot of different places, and there's a tree here, and sometimes people get little saplings from this tree and they will plant it around in different places. So you'll see this tree in many different places, and we've got one here at this temple as well. So any questions on this one? No questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do then is in class by just thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to come here. We have classes on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And when you're not here, you can actually attend by live stream, because we live stream our classes. And if you can't attend by live stream, you can actually watch the recordings, and all of our books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, even personal guidance. It's all available for you at no cost, where you can slowly learn this path to enlightenment, this better way of life that the Buddha taught, where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. I recommend you start with this first book. It's called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can download it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it yourself. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing costs, so we can purchase more books, or you can order it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. And you could be slowly learning. We're going to actually restart this program from the very beginning on January 4th, where we're coming towards the end of this book, but on January 4th, we're going to restart it from the very beginning. It's a 7-month program where you can gradually learn all the foundational teachings. And if you'd like to do some more today at 6:30 this evening in the main hall, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation, which is a different type of meditation than we did this morning. This is a meditation to help you essentially rewire your mind and eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike towards others. Right now, if you dislike certain people, it's actually coming from your own mind, and you can eliminate that from your mind. You might even have negative self-talk or this like inner dialogue where you're degrading and diminishing yourself. This meditation is actually really good to eliminate that. So I'm going to be teaching you guys that in the main hall at 6:30 tonight, and then I'll just share a little bit of the teachings of the Buddha, and then I'll open up to whatever questions students have. So that's going to be happening tonight at 6:30. At 9 p.m. tonight here at the classroom, I'm going to be sharing this same talk again, where I teach the same class, because like right now people in Europe are sleeping. So as they start waking up, they have the opportunity to attend a live class. So you're welcome to attend any of these particular regular classes that we have. And there's also courses and retreats throughout the month month that you'll find on our bulletin board over there. And you'll also find it on our website. If you go to the events calendar on our website, you're going to see all the different events here. And then also as I travel, you'll be able to see those as well. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.